Alright, welcome back guys for TGS week number 4. I know this is a little different, it's a little impromptu, but IRL has been kicking my ass recently, so I'm just going to have to settle with this. I don't have the time to fit in around exams currently, so I'm just going to do what I traditionally have done in the past, like for WPF, where I just kind of briefly cover the matchup, show you what my prep was, and then kind of go into the game. So you can see my team is on the left here. Thorn Tea, Iron Treads, Run and Wash, Dragonite, Terra Ceruledge, Overquill, Revavroom, Mienshao, Deoxys Defense, and Low Kicks. Excuse me. And Burger's team is on the right there with Garchomp, Terra Enamorus, big threat there, Sneasler, Scizor, Slowbro, Serena, Rotom Heat, Hisuian Samurott, Ursaring, and Sudowoodo. So going into this week, I believe Burger picked up Hisuian Samurott, so he had it for this matchup, and Rotom Heat. I expected both of them to come into this matchup as they both looked pretty good. And I assume he picked them up kind of just to prepare for future matchups moving forward, including myself. So I kind of expected both of those to come. I wasn't sure if Serena would come, as it was his only way to remove outside of Scizor, and I wasn't sure if Scizor would come either because of Rotom Wash, Ceruledge, and Revavroom and all that stuff. But Bullet Punch Banded is pretty good into a lot of my threats regardless. So I kind of figured Scizor might come. So if he were to bring it, it would be probably the top. Actually, I don't know. Probably, I think I ultimately landed on Garchomp, Terra Enamorus, Slowbro, because I thought Slowbro was pretty good for Dragonite. Rotom Heat, Samurott, and then Scizor. I wasn't sure if he would end up actually bringing the Sneasler, but if he did bring Sneasler, I figured it might end up being over something like Scizor. So that's kind of where my head was at. So moving into my prep, I ended up starting off with, I'm not going to start with Rotom. I'm going to start with Ceruledge. This is my primary breaker for the game. It's Terra Ghost. It's the Mon that I want to Terra in the matchup. And it was kind of my dedicated Terra regardless. Unless there was like a weird niche situation where Revavroom got to use it, but this is primarily going to be the Terra user. Its best ways to break with Terra Ghost, Poltergeist, Close Combat, Shadow Sneak, Swords Dance. I was debating whether or not I wanted Terra Blast over Close Combat, but I didn't want to get walled by Ursaring in case he did bring Ursaring, and also gave me an option to kind of nuke Samurott. So I figured I just would put Close Combat, and then I settled with Poltergeist over Terra Blast because Poltergeist did the damage that I needed specifically versus some Mons. But I wasn't sure if I wanted Poltergeist or Terra Blast, and I think with SD, Poltergeist was better, but Terra Blast was more consistent. As it can't miss, as we saw last week, I did miss, and it's not reliant on any items here. As you see, we brought no knockoff because of Poltergeist. Then Revavroom, Air Balloon, it's a Terra Fairy type, Gong Shot, Iron Head, Temper Flare, Shift Gear. It's primarily here to kind of check the Enamorus, and that's it. The Terra Fairy is supposed to spook the Garchomp from being able to really do anything versus this. So if it is a Garchomp that only has stabs, it won't actually have a way to hit Revavroom if I did Terra. And I assume he has to pack one of Iron Head or Poison Jab, just like Fist did on his Gouging Fire last week with Iron Head. So I figured if Garchomp was going to run anything, it would probably run 3 attacks SD. And then Terra Enamorus, this is primarily my check because I wanted Treads as my check to Garchomp since it's faster. And I can use Revavroom. So, well, the speed doesn't matter on Treads, but Revavroom, Air Balloon, it's to cover the Earth Power because I'm not going to Terra versus Enamorus. I EV to live a +1 Mystical Fire if he is that Stellar set. But I can also live any Stellar hit because it is... it's not like insanely strong, that is. But yeah, Gong Shot, Iron Head. I have Iron Head in case he is Stellar or just Terra Fairy. That way I can just guarantee kill it and not have to rely on Gong Shot. But I have Gong Shot in case I do Shift Gear. I can hit things like Rotom Heat, Serena, Slowbro, Samurott a little bit harder. And then I have Temper Flare specifically for Scizor. But yeah, Torn. It's a plot set, Bleak Wind, Sludge Bomb, U-Turn, Nasty Plot. I originally was going to bring a Rain Dance, Damp Rock set with plot, but it took too long to set up, and I figured with U-turning versus something like Rotom, I can bring in something like Ceruledge and kind of catch the Rotom Heat that way, and break that way. It'll be a little bit easier. So I figured, if anything, I'll force things to break down with Ceruledge and use Torn as kind of like a facilitator, and then I can break with it later on, or clean with it. So Liquid Storm is mainly basically hits everything except Rotom Heat and Sudowoodo. Sudowoodo I'm just U-turn on anyways because of its sturdy. And then if Rotom Heat takes some chip damage already or gets poisoned by a neutral Sludge Bomb, +2 Sludge Bomb should be able to pick it off later on down the line. Rotom Wash, Rocky Helmet. This is just the Samurott Hisui switch in, basically. I was afraid of Scarf and like the lead sequences of Torn with Rotom Wash and all that versus like a Samurott, so I made it a little bit bulkier instead of fast, and I ran some speed creep on it. But Hydro Pump, Volt Switch, Reflect, and Pain Split. Reflect actually pretty useful because outside of Enamorus and Rotom Heat, his team is pretty physical, and Rotom Heat I can kind of check between in a way Ceruledge and Deoxys. I believe Ceruledge and Rotom Wash hit a relatively similar speed tier, but I think Ceruledge is slightly fast. No, they're the same. Yeah, they're the same. And then Deoxys is Eject Button, Nightshade, Ice Beam, Teleport, Stealth Rock. Just my rocker, but here it's mainly just to pivot around the Volt Switch on Rotom Heat initially, which is what I want. Or I can pivot into like Enamorus if he gets a Stellar hit, activates my Eject Button. That way he can't start spamming Stellar and getting more boosts. And then Ice Beams hit Garchomp, Nightshade hits literally everything else. Teleport is for slow pivoting, then Treads Balloon for Garchomp specifically. Deoxys is also defensive to kind of handle Sneasler if it needs to, but it has no recovery because I don't need recovery. It's not going to last long. I can't play that slow into this offensive of in a matchup. So Treads is Balloon as well. Garchomp check, Heavy Slam, Earthquake, Ice Spinner, Rapid Spin. It's mainly there to kind of check the Garchomp. Ice Spinner, he's Yachi Berry. It really just depends if he clicks Scale Shot again, or if he clicks Iron Head. I could probably Rapid Spin into Ice Spinner and force him out. Or I can just click Ice Spinner and nuke him for a lot of damage, put him in range of Terra Ghost, Shadow Sneak. And and then Heavy Slam and Earthquake. So I wasn't sure what type of Enamorus he would bring, but if he is Stellar or Fairy, Heavy Slam hits that, and then Earthquake covered specifically like Scizor if you wanted to pivot into Scizor, Garchomp if I want to take Rough Skin, and then it also hit Enamorus if he was like Terra Electric, which could have been a possible thing because I think Terra Electric is pretty good in my team regardless. So I wanted to cover that, but the other thing I probably could have put on it was Volt Switch, was what I was debating, because it allowed me to pivot around Slowbro a little bit easier, but I figured going like Deoxys or Rotom Wash on like a Slowbro or something was perfectly fine. So yeah, this is the team I brought. Let's move into the replay here. So you can see I did nail 5 of them. He did opt to bring the Garchomp, Enamorus, Samurott, Slowbro, and Heatom. So I expected these 5 to come. I said it was either Scizor or Sneasler as that last slot, but he ended up actually bringing the Ursaring. So he did want to stop Terra Ghost spam, or maybe this is like a backup pivot into something. I don't know. So kind of what I expected, but the Ursaring, not really. So my typical lead was still going to be Torn T here. So why don't we hop into it? So he leads Ursaring as I lead my Torn, and I knew I was always going to be U-turning right away as I don't want to take a Body Slam here. So I go Rotom as he goes for an SD, so this is going to give me a free Reflect turn. Kind of helps versus the rest of the team. I'm going to slow this down a little bit more. But yeah, I decided to stand and just get chip damage because I know he has to attack me or he's going to SD again. But he starts taking Rocky Helmet damage. Obviously, this damage is very good for him down the line because his Samurott is going to be able to knock out this Rotom Wash. But ultimately, I know I'm going to be able to get in versus something like Rotom or Slowbro, and I can click Pain Split eventually, and that'll get me back to full. So I should be fine versus like a Scarf Samurott type of end game. So that crit was actually pretty big from Hydro Pump as it put it in Volt Switch range. Had I not gotten the crit, I would have had to Hydro Pump again, and that makes it a little bit tough because Rotom would have been in, but the Reflect would have been up. But it would have invited something like Terra Enamorus to come in, and as you can see, Terra Enamorus is the second slot and it is the Stellar. So I knew it was Stellar at this point, and I didn't want the... I probably should have... I kind of wish I didn't have the luxury of Volt Switching here. The crit kind of gave me that out. I wanted Rotom in to force in the Enamorus so I can go Deoxys, get the eject button, and then I can pressure out with Revavroom from there. And to me, that seemed a little bit more useful, and I didn't have to play anything risky here. But I went for Volt Switch. I didn't really want to risk the miss if I didn't have to, so I went for Volt Switch. Positionally, I don't think this was any better for me. This is a little too slow for me. But I went to Torn here. It was a good reset. I figured Rotom Heat would come in, and it does. So I opted just go for U-turn here. And this is where I was saying it was unfortunate. I didn't want to go into Ceruledge as it wasn't Flash Fire, and this could be a foul play Rotom Heat. So I went into Deoxys just to invalidate the Volt Switch, and it would give me a free switch. But again, I wanted to save the eject button specifically for the Enamorus. So a little unfortunate that the crit Hydro Pump I actually felt like hurt me because it didn't force me to go for Hydro Pump again, which I would have done. But since I had the out, I went into a different way. Obviously the positioning didn't work out, but I get my Ceruledge in and go for Poltergeist. He brought some good prep here. The Slowbro, no item. I felt it was also a really hard read into prep because had I just been Terra Blast with Ghost, I won, like, just insta two-shot this thing. So I don't really fully understand the thought process behind no item. Like it makes sense in the context of like hard reading Poltergeist, but in that case, the better item would be Kasibberry, because you would activate on the Polter, and then you would have no item. So at least you would know, and at least you can cover the Terra Blast if you had the Kasib. In this case, you did not cover one side of it, and you just hard relied on another. Obviously, it worked well into my set, but I think risky prep like this, it's a bit unfortunate because it rewards just hard reading prep like that, and it also kind of invalidates the learning curve for having it not work. Because had it not worked, he would have lost his Slowbro, or he would have just straight up died. If I clicked SD and then Terra Blast, boom, it was dead. I think Kasibberry just covered all facets a lot better there. So a bit unfortunate. Obviously works out for him, and I have to deal with the consequences of it. But I figured I can get my Rotom Wash in, as he might just click Foul Play or Psychic here. But he does make a double into Enamorus. I did figure he might double since Slowbro doesn't have Teleport, and bringing in something like Deoxys or Rotom there was not ideal for him. I didn't want to go Torn because I didn't want him to T-Wave randomly, even though I have immunities. But I went Rotom, it was safe. But this is where it's unfortunate because I know this thing is going to start Stellaring. Positionally, it's just not been great for me. But at least I know I can hit it with Revavroom. But he goes for the Terra Blast here. Does 32. I think that was on like the lower end. So he goes for just another attack here. Doesn't care if I'm like T-Wave or something. I have no idea what its item is. And I don't get rocks for this game. So I decided to go into my Revavroom here as it's my dedicated check. And he actually didn't click Terra Blast because he didn't want to risk the roll. I guess he thought it could have been. So he went for Moonblast. So he was only +1. He was not +2. So I knew I could live with Revavroom here. And I can click Iron Head and just kill him. But in my opinion, it doesn't seem worthwhile to sack this Mon. Like, it looks like it's not Scarf, obviously, because it used 2 different moves. But it could still be like an agility set, and it could just be some type of breaking set. Now, I still think it has a lot of value here, and he has an entire Slowbro, which is designed to check, Ceruledge or like Revavroom, for example. So I feel like he's perfectly fine swapping out here. Iron Head is the safest play. I have no reason to overpredict here, but I feel like positionally I have screwed myself the early part of this game. So I kind of wanted to go for Gunk Shot, and the reason being is it still killed Enamorus 80% of the time. and if I do land it, I could potentially poison the likes of like a Slowbro, a Garchomp, or a Rotom Heat. I doubt Rotom Heat was probably going to come in, but based off the U-turn damage, this thing was actually Fizz Def and not Spadef. So, or it was mixed defensive of some kind. But I knew Slowbro, if I can get a poison on that, that was going to help my Ceruledge once I can SD and all that stuff. The Samurott still needed to get chipped, which by the looks of it, it might have just been Scarf in the back or some type of SD set to try and win. So I had to be very wary of that. So I figured he really shouldn't stay in. He has a easy pivot to Slowbro, and if he wants to break Balloon, he can just use Slowbro in that way. And I mean, at this point, Psychic is extremely free. I mean, and so is Foul Play. He really had no reason not to go Slowbro here. So I go for Gunk Shot because I'm like, I can kill this and I can poison the Slowbro, and poisoning the Slowbro is going to help a tremendous ton. But he decides to stay in. He goes for Terra Blast here. He breaks my Balloon. And so I'm like, okay, I can just claim this, which is really nice. And the Namorous is going to be gone. And that's like one less threat. It's just basically Garchomp and the Samurott. But no, I missed Gunk Shot. So the risk, was it worth it? I think it was still the best play positionally to try and get for the Slowbro. But obviously, I'm going to lose a ton of pieces here. And the Enamorous is +3. So I'm forced to go into, yeah, it's not looking great. So I'm forced to go Ceruledge here. So I debated whether or not I wanted to use Torn to revenge and go for like a Sludge Bomb or something, and then go Ceruledge. But I figured at this point, given what he has, I might have to try and win with Torn, since Rev is gone. So I go Ceruledge, I Terra. I figured he might not click Terra Blast here, because it doesn't kill. So he needs to go for Earth Power, which is a roll. And fortunately for him, he does get the roll, which meant that I don't get to save the Ceruledge. The reason I didn't go for Polter is because if he got in the roll, I got no chip on this. So I needed to go for Sneak and get that chip for Sludge Bomb range. So I'm forced to stay in and just sack it, even though Polter would have killed, but obviously Polter would have missed, knowing my luck the past 2 weeks. So I have to sack this, and then I can go into Torn here, and I just go for Sludge Bomb, I believe. But yeah, Sludge Bomb comes out. I do get a poison, which is really nice. So now it's pretty low. So at this point, I can technically go for a Plot. But I figured he might just go for a Volt Switch here. Just positionally, he doesn't need to actually like kill this and keep this that healthy. So going for a Volt Switch here is actually his best play. That's how I see it. So I opt to go for U-turn here. I think him going for a Volt Switch makes the most sense because I think you just Volt Switch and then you get in your Samurott from that point if it is Scarfed. But he just goes for Overheat. So I just can't get a good position this entire game. So it's really unfortunate for me. But yeah, Rotom kills that. I'm go Torn. He's -2. I just pray he just goes for a weak Volt Switch or something, but he decides to go for Pain Split, and he actually heals up a pretty decent amount here. And this Sludge Bomb is not going to kill unless I get a crit or something. So I go for Sludge Bomb, doesn't do a whole lot, no crit. He's going to go for Volt Switch now, which is what I thought he was going to do initially, which made more sense, but I guess he thought I had to go Treads or something. I don't know. Yeah, this is Scarf. This should just win the game. It should knock out Rotom Wash, and it should knock out the Torn here. But he decides to go for Aqua Cutter for some reason. So I could have actually just sacked Torn and maybe tried to solo with this, but I mean, he still had an Amorous and everything, so it doesn't really matter. He goes for Aqua Cutter, and you'll see my Bleak Wind doesn't do a whole lot. And yeah, we get 5-0'd. So we got 4-0'd last week. We got saved by a Flare Blitz differential, and we get 5-0'd this week. I think we obviously still could have won last week. I'll talk on it a little bit, but the River Room, had I gotten the Flare Blitz play correct, and just not gave up, because every time I should have always gone for Flare Blitz, but at that point I was very tilted at that point in the game, so I just kind of conceded and just said, kill my Revavroom, I want the game to be over. But if I didn't do that, he actually played into it, and Revavroom actually could have won had I gotten the taunt sequence correct versus bundle and all that. So, you know, there was an out. Here, there was no out for missing the hit. Obviously, you can see I was not very happy here. Did not say GG or anything. I think earlier I didn't mention it in battle, but I did a live comm of this that will never see the light of day. I said some very unsavory things in the commentary about the battle and myself for making the gunk shot play, but I still stand by the gunk shot play. In my opinion, he had no reason to sack it, but his reasoning was that his Garchomp was completely walled by Terra Fairy, Balloon, Revavroom, and he said he needed it gone for Garchomp to win. But again, I was not afraid of Garchomp because I had Treads to revenge it, and he wasn't Yachi Berry. So had I just Iron-Headed or landed the gunk shot, positionally wise, the Rotom Wash would have been really good, with Samurai could have gotten Pain Split off on something. Ultimately, this would have been an easier endgame for me, and I think Torn could have won the game with Rotom Wash. So it's a bit unfortunate, but that's how the cookie crumbles. It's Mons at this point. But yeah, IRL's been kicking my ass, and it's been pretty rough trying to stay motivated for these games, but my prep, in my opinion, has still been motivated, but my care for the actual game itself has depleted a lot. So hopefully I can, yeah, we're still 2-2. We might have to win out at this point. The differential is pretty bad, but yeah, I mean, it's might not be in our control at this point if we lose another game. So hopefully we can bounce back and you know, keep the streak alive. But next week I'll start off. I made some free agent transactions, so I'll start off the broadcast next week with those free agencies. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this beatdown against me, but hopefully we can bounce back. All right, peace.